In the quiet town of Maplewood, there stood an old Victorian house at the end of Hollow Hill Road. The townsfolk whispered about it, their voices hushed as if speaking too loudly would summon its haunting presence. The house had been abandoned for decades, yet every autumn, as the leaves turned crimson and gold, strange occurrences were reported, lights flickering in the windows, an eerie melody drifting through the trees, and, most chilling of all, the sight of a pale figure peering from the attic. The story began in 1965 when the last family to live in the house, the Morgans, mysteriously vanished. Neighbors had seen them just days before, smiling, waving, their little girl, Lucy, skipping through the yard. But one morning, the front door stood ajar, and they were never seen again. Rumors swirled about what had happened. Some claimed they had been taken by the spirits that haunted the land, while others believed they had simply run away, leaving everything behind. Years passed, and curiosity grew among the town's children. They dared each other to venture to the house, but most returned empty-handed, too scared to cross the threshold. Only one girl, Mia, was bold enough to make the trek alone. A newcomer in town, she had heard the stories but felt a strange pull toward the old house, a mix of fascination and dread. One crisp October afternoon, Mia decided it was time to uncover the truth. Armed with only a flashlight and her phone, she walked up the overgrown path, the crunch of leaves underfoot echoing like whispers. The house loomed ahead, its once bright paint faded to a dull gray, the windows like dark eyes watching her approach. As she pushed the creaking gate open, it groaned in protest, sending a shiver up her spine. The air felt thick, heavy with a sense of foreboding. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the porch, where the floorboards sagged beneath her weight. Inside, the air was stale and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the autumn day outside. Dust motes danced in the beam of her flashlight as she moved cautiously through the foyer. Faded family portraits lined the walls, the subject's eyes seeming to follow her every move. She could almost hear their silent cries, begging to be remembered. As she explored, Mia felt a tug of nostalgia, as if the house were alive, echoing memories from its past. In the living room, she found a cracked mirror, its surface marred but still reflecting her image. Suddenly, she noticed something behind her, a flicker of movement. She spun around, but there was nothing there, just shadows and silence. Feeling the weight of the house pressing in on her, Mia continued to the kitchen, where remnants of a life once lived still lingered. An old, rusted can lay on the counter, labeled Peas Best by 1968. She chuckled nervously, but the laughter quickly faded when she heard a soft melody wafting through the air, a lullaby. It seemed to come from upstairs. Curiosity piqued. Mia hesitated before climbing the staircase, each step creaking ominously underfoot. The air grew colder as she ascended, the melody growing clearer with each step. It was hauntingly beautiful, a lullaby that tugged at her heart. As she reached the top, she paused outside a door that was slightly ajar, the sound emanating from within. "Hello?" she called, her voice shaking. The melody stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. Heart racing, Mia pushed the door open, revealing a small attic space filled with cobwebs and dust. A small rocking chair sat in the center, swaying gently as if someone had just risen from it. "Mama?" came a child's voice from the shadows. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She felt an overwhelming urge to run, but something held her in place. "Lucy?" she whispered, recognizing the name from the town's stories. The figure of a little girl appeared, her pale face framed by tangled hair. She wore a faded dress, and her eyes, dark and haunting, seemed to glimmer with unshed tears. "I've been waiting for someone to play with me," Lucy said softly. Mia's heart raced. "What happened to you? Where's your family?" The girl looked down, her expression sorrowful. "They left me. I thought they'd come back. I waited and waited." Just then, a sudden cold breeze swept through the attic, sending a shiver down Mia's spine. The room darkened, shadows creeping in from the corners, twisting and writhing like living things. "You shouldn't be here," Lucy warned, her voice trembling. "The others don't like visitors." Mia's instincts screamed at her to leave, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from the girl. "What others?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. Before Lucy could respond, the temperature plummeted, and the shadows surged forward, their whispers rising to a deafening chorus. "Leave! Leave!" they cried, echoing through the room. Panic surged within Mia. She turned to flee, but the shadows wrapped around her, cold and suffocating. "Stay with us!" they hissed, their voices a chilling mix of despair and longing. "Mia!" Lucy cried, reaching out toward her. "You have to go. They'll take you too." With every ounce of strength, Mia broke free from the grip of the shadows and bolted for the door. As she sprinted down the stairs, the house seemed to come alive, the walls groaning as if in protest. The lullaby echoed behind her, now twisted and haunting, turning into a cacophony of cries. She burst through the front door, stumbling onto the porch, breathless and trembling. But as she turned to look back at the house, the front door slammed shut with a resounding bang, the windows going dark, as if the house had swallowed Lucy whole. Mia ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't stop until she reached the safety of the streetlights, the warm glow of her town a welcome sight. That night, as she lay in bed, the melody of the lullaby haunted her dreams. She couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, still waiting. And deep down, she knew that Lucy's story wasn't over. The house was alive, and it craved new memories, new souls to entwine with its dark past. Days turned into weeks, and though Mia tried to forget, she found herself drawn back to Hollow Hill Road, standing at the gate, staring at the house. The whispers tugged at her, and she realized that the only way to truly set Lucy free was to share her story, to ensure she was remembered. Gathering her courage, Mia made her way to the town hall, determined to tell the story of the Morgans, of Lucy, of the darkness that still lingered in that old Victorian. As she spoke to the townsfolk, their faces turned pale. Many had heard the stories, but few had dared to confront the truth. And as Mia recounted her experience, she felt a shift in the air, a connection forming with the people around her. In that moment, she realized she wasn't just telling a story, she was shining a light into the darkness, bringing forth the memories that had been buried for so long. But as she concluded her tale, a chill ran through the room. Outside, the wind howled, and for a fleeting second, Mia thought she saw a pale figure watching from the window of the old house. "Help me," the voice whispered, barely audible above the wind. Mia took a deep breath, her heart racing. The battle against the shadows was far from over. But now she knew she wouldn't face it alone. The memories would live on, and she would be their voice. And as the first leaves of autumn began to fall, the whispers of Hollow Hill grew louder, echoing through Maplewood, a reminder that some stories are never truly finished. Mia felt a rush of determination as she finished her story, the townsfolk staring at her in stunned silence. Whispers erupted in the crowd, a mixture of disbelief and fear, but she could see the flicker of understanding in their eyes, the realization that the shadows of Hollow Hill were not just tales to scare children. "I saw her," Mia said, her voice steadying. "Lucy was waiting for someone to help her. We can't let her story fade away." A murmur spread through the crowd, and a woman in the back, Mrs. Granger, stood up. "I remember Lucy. I was just a girl when they disappeared. We all thought it was just a story. But," her voice trembled, "what if it's true? What if the house still holds their spirits?" The crowd buzzed with a mix of skepticism and fear, but Mia felt a shift. They were ready to confront the past. The mayor, a stout man with a weary face, nodded slowly. "Perhaps it's time we investigate. We can't allow fear to control us any longer." Plans began to take shape. A group of volunteers formed, determined to return to the house, armed with flashlights, courage, and Mia's stories of Lucy. They would exorcise the shadows, face the unknown, and finally bring peace to the Morgans. As dusk fell, Mia stood at the front of the group, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. The house loomed ahead, its silhouette stark against the evening sky. "Remember," she urged the group, If we hear the lullaby, we need to stick together. Lucy might be trying to guide us. With flashlights flickering, they made their way up the overgrown path, the air thick with anticipation. The front door creaked open, as if inviting them inside. Mia led the way, the beam of her flashlight illuminating the dust-covered furniture and faded wallpaper. Inside, the house felt different, almost alive. The air crackled with energy, a whispering reminder of the spirits trapped within. As they explored room by room, Mia felt a tug at her heart, a connection to the past that pulled her deeper into the house. In the living room they gathered, the group huddled together. "Let's share our memories," Mia suggested, remembering how the warmth of shared stories had strengthened her resolve. "If we can connect with Lucy's spirit, we might be able to reach her." One by one, the townsfolk began to speak, sharing snippets of their childhood, memories of the Morgans, and tales of the house. Mia felt the energy shift, a palpable warmth filling the room as the stories flowed like a river, washing away the years of fear. But as the last voice faded, a soft melody began to drift through the eerie lullaby, haunting and familiar. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the room fell silent. "Do you hear that?" someone whispered, eyes wide with fear. Mia nodded, heart racing. "It's Lucy. She's here." The shadows in the corners of the room thickened, swirling like a dark mist. A faint outline began to take shape, a little girl, her pale face illuminated by the beams of their flashlights. "Please." Lucy's voice was soft but urgent. "You have to help me." Mia stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Lucy, we're here for you. We want to help you and your family. What do you need?" The shadows twisted violently, and the lullaby grew louder, echoing off the walls. "They won't let me go," Lucy cried, her small hands reaching out toward Mia. "You have to find my family. They're trapped here too." Fear gripped the group as the atmosphere thickened with tension. The shadows seemed to pulse, writhing with a life of their own. "Stay together," Mia shouted, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "Who's trapping you?" a voice shouted from the back. "Is it the darkness?" Lucy shook her head, and the shadows recoiled as if struck. "No, it's something worse. It feeds on our memories, our love. It wants to keep us here forever." The revelation hit Mia like a cold wave. This wasn't just about Lucy, it was about all the souls who had been lost, their memories consumed by the darkness. "We have to find the source," she urged. "Where is it?" The girl's face twisted with sorrow, and for a moment, Mia felt an overwhelming sadness wash over her. "In the basement, the room with the door that never opens." Without hesitation, the group turned toward the staircase, adrenaline pushing them forward. They descended into the basement, the air growing colder with each step. The shadows pressed closer, wrapping around them like a shroud, but Mia could feel the warmth of Lucy's presence guiding her. At the bottom of the stairs, they stood before a heavy wooden door, its surface marked with strange symbols that seemed to pulsate in the dim light. "This is it," Mia said, feeling a mix of dread and determination. "We need to open it." As they gathered around the door, the shadows surged, their whispers escalating into frantic cries. "Don't open it. You'll be trapped." Mia steeled her resolve. "We have to try. Lucy, we're here for you." With a collective effort, they pushed against the door. It creaked and groaned, but then, with a final heave, it swung open, revealing a small, dark room filled with old relics, photographs, toys, and letters, all entangled in shadows that writhed like angry serpents. In the center of the room lay a dusty old music box, its lid closed tightly. Mia felt a pull toward it, the melody of the lullaby resonating deep within her. "This is it," she whispered, reaching for the box. But as she did, the shadows erupted, swirling violently around them, howling in fury. "No, you cannot take what is ours." "Lucy," Mia shouted, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing down on her. "Help us." With a fierce determination, she opened the music box, and a haunting melody filled the room, the notes weaving through the shadows, turning their cries to whispers. As the music played, Lucy's spirit appeared beside Mia, her eyes bright with hope. "Together," Lucy urged, her voice echoing with strength. "We can break the chains." The townsfolk joined hands, forming a circle around the music box. As the melody swelled, they began to chant, their voices rising in unison. "We remember. We remember." The shadows thrashed, their forms distorting in agony as the music filled the room. The memories contained within the relics flickered like fireflies, breaking free from the darkness. With each note, the shadows shrank, their power waning as the love and laughter of the Morgans resonated through the air. "Don't stop," Mia urged, feeling the energy surge within her. "We're almost there." But just as victory felt within reach, a colossal shadow surged forth, a mass of despair and rage. "You will pay for this," it roared, its voice a chilling echo of all the sorrow it had consumed. Mia's heart raced, but she refused to back down. "No, we will break free," she shouted, pouring every ounce of her energy into the chant. Suddenly, Lucy stepped forward, her small figure radiant against the encroaching darkness. "I won't let you take them," she declared, her voice powerful and unwavering. "I choose love." The shadow hesitated, the force of Lucy's spirit pushing against it. In that moment of clarity, the townsfolk chanted louder, their voices intertwining with the melody, forming a protective barrier around Lucy and the music box. And then, as if the universe itself had aligned, the melody reached a crescendo, the room glowing with an ethereal light. The shadow screeched, unraveling under the weight of love and memory. In a blinding flash, the darkness exploded outward, dissipating into wisps of smoke that curled into nothingness. The room filled with a brilliant light, illuminating the relics and the faces of the townsfolk, who stood breathless, hearts pounding. As the light dimmed, the music faded, leaving a profound silence in its wake. Lucy beamed, her spirit shimmering with joy. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a soft breeze. "You've set us free." The room was now filled with warmth, the oppressive weight lifted. Mia felt the spirits of the Morgans surrounding her, a gentle embrace of gratitude and love. She smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're finally at peace." But as the last remnants of the shadows faded, Mia caught a glimpse of something in the corner, a small, dark shape that hadn't been banished. The final whisper of the darkness seemed to linger, a reminder that while they had won this battle, the war against the shadows was not yet over. The townsfolk began to stir, relief washing over them. "What now?" someone asked, looking to Mia for guidance. "We keep telling the stories," she replied, her voice firm. "We remember the Morgans. We remember Lucy. And we keep our light shining, so the darkness never returns." With renewed purpose, they made their way out of the house, the night air fresh and filled with promise. But as they left Hollow Hill behind, Mia felt a lingering chill, a whisper in the wind that reminded her that some stories were always lurking, waiting for a chance to be told. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. As they emerged from the house, the night air felt crisp and alive, the stars twinkling above like distant eyes watching over them. The townsfolk gathered in a huddle, still processing the gravity of what had just happened. Mia looked around, noting the expressions of relief mingled with disbelief. "We need to spread the word," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her. "Everyone deserves to know what happened here. They need to remember Lucy and her family." The mayor nodded, a newfound resolve in his eyes. "You're right. We can't let their story fade into darkness again. We'll hold a town meeting, share our experiences, and ensure that this house is never forgotten." But as they began to disperse, a heavy feeling settled over Mia. The darkness had been defeated, yes, but the chilling whisper she had felt just moments before lingered at the back of her mind. It was as if something unseen was still watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. That night, unable to shake the unease, Mia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The melody of the music box echoed faintly in her ears, mingling with Lucy's soft laughter. But amidst those comforting thoughts, A dark shadow crept into her dreams, a swirling mass that loomed at the edges of her consciousness, whispering her name. Mia! She jolted awake, heart racing. The room bathed in darkness. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of movement near her window, a figure, pale and flickering like a candle in the wind. She bolted upright, her flashlight clattering to the floor. Mia! The voice was unmistakable, soft, innocent, but laced with an urgency that made her blood run cold. She grabbed the flashlight and pointed it toward the window, but there was nothing there, only the quiet rustle of leaves in the wind. Lucy? She called, her voice trembling. Is that you? Silence. Just then, her phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen illuminating the dark room. A message from Mrs. Granger popped up. Asterisk, we need to talk. Something isn't right. Mia's heart raced as she quickly texted back, asking for details. The response was immediate. Meet me at the old church. Midnight. With a sense of dread pooling in her stomach, Mia threw on a jacket and grabbed her flashlight. She stepped outside into the cool night, the air heavy with anticipation. The moon hung high, casting an eerie glow over the quiet town. As she made her way to the old church, memories of the night at the Morgans' house replayed in her mind. Had they truly banished the darkness? Or had they only pushed it back, allowing it to fester and grow? The church stood at the end of a long, winding road, its steeple reaching toward the sky like a skeletal finger. As Mia approached, she noticed a flickering light inside. Mrs. Granger? She called softly as she stepped through the creaky door. The interior was dimly lit by candles, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and burning wax. Mrs. Granger stood near the altar, her face pale and drawn. Thank you for coming, Mia. I've been trying to make sense of everything. What's wrong? Mia asked, sensing the urgency in her voice. After you left the house, I couldn't shake this feeling, Mrs. Granger said, her voice trembling. I went back to my home, and there, I found something that shouldn't exist. Mia's heart raced. What did you find? Mrs. Granger pulled out a small, dusty box from her bag. This was hidden in my attic, wrapped in a faded cloth. I thought it was just an old trinket, but when I opened it, I felt a presence, a dark one. With trembling hands, she opened the box, revealing a collection of old photographs, each one depicting the Morgans. But there was something off about them. The faces appeared distorted, their eyes hollow, as if drained of life. I think these are the last remnants of their spirits, Mrs. Granger whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I felt it when I touched them. The darkness is still here, feeding off their memories. Panic coursed through Mia. What do we do? How do we stop it? I don't know, Mrs. Granger admitted, her voice thick with fear. But we need to gather the townsfolk again. If the darkness is tied to those photographs, we have to confront it head-on. Just then, a cold gust of wind swept through the church, snuffing out the candles. Shadows leapt to life, swirling in the corners, echoing with distant whispers. Mia's breath quickened. It's here. A figure emerged from the darkness, a twisted silhouette that loomed large and menacing. You thought you could banish me? It hissed, the voice reverberating through the air. I feed on your fears, your memories. You cannot escape me. Mia felt the weight of despair pressing in. We will not let you take them again, she shouted, gripping the edge of the altar as the shadows closed in. But the darkness surged forward, a tangible force that threatened to engulf them. You cannot save what is already lost, it taunted, the air growing colder with each word. Lucy, Mia cried, feeling the pull of desperation. We need you. And then, as if summoned by her call, a light flickered at the edges of the darkness, a familiar melody beginning to play softly. You must remember, a voice echoed, gentle yet strong. In that moment, the shadows hesitated, a flicker of recognition crossing their twisted forms. Remember the love. Lucy's voice resonated, filling the room with warmth. You have the power to break this curse. Gathering her courage, Mia stepped forward, the photographs clutched tightly in her hand. "We remember," she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "We remember the Morgans. We remember Lucy." As the words left her lips, the candles reignited, casting a bright light that pushed against the encroaching shadows. The darkness shrieked, a cacophony of anguished cries that filled the church. Together, Mia and Mrs. Granger held the photographs high, and the shadows writhed in fury. "You can't take them from us," Mrs. Granger shouted, joining her voice with Mia's. The shadows convulsed, their forms twisting violently. "You will regret this," they howled, but the light grew stronger, illuminating the room. "Remember," Mia and Mrs. Granger called out together, their voices echoing with determination. As the last note of the lullaby filled the air, a blinding flash erupted, the darkness dissipating into 1,000 shimmering fragments. Mia felt a rush of energy, a sense of relief as the weight of despair lifted. But just as the shadows began to fade completely, a final whisper echoed through the church, sending chills down her spine. "This isn't over, I will return." The light dimmed, and silence fell. The remnants of the darkness were gone, but the weight of its threat lingered in the air. Breathless and shaken, Mia turned to Mrs. Granger, whose eyes reflected a mix of fear and hope. "Did we really do it?" "I think we bought ourselves time," Mrs. Granger replied, her voice steadying. "But we need to prepare. The darkness will find a way back." Mia nodded, her heart resolute. "Then we'll be ready. We won't let it take Lucy or the Morgans again." As they left the church, the first light of dawn began to break on the horizon. The shadows of Hollow Hill had retreated, but Mia knew they were only biding their time. Together, she and the townsfolk would face whatever came next, determined to keep the light shining against the darkness. But deep down, she felt a sense of unease, a knowing that the shadows were not easily defeated, and the fight was far from over. In the weeks that followed, the town of Maplewood united, sharing stories of the Morgans and Lucy, ensuring their memories lived on. The old church became a hub for meetings, where townsfolk gathered to strengthen their bond and confront the lingering shadows of Hollow Hill. But the darkness was patient. One stormy night, as thunder rumbled overhead, Mia was awoken by a haunting melody, the lullaby that had once filled the air. She rushed to the church, where the townsfolk had gathered again, faces pale with fear. "It's back," Mrs. Granger whispered, pointing toward the door, which rattled ominously. Shadows twisted outside, swirling with a dark energy that sent chills down their spines. Mia stepped forward, clutching the photographs. "We won't let you take them again," she shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. The group joined hands, forming a protective circle as they began to chant, calling upon the love and memories of the Morgans. As the shadows surged forward, the light from their bond grew stronger. Lucy's spirit appeared, radiant and determined. "Together," she urged. With one final, powerful chant, the light exploded outward, engulfing the shadows. The room filled with warmth as the darkness shrieked and dissipated into nothingness. Breathless and victorious, the townsfolk collapsed in a heap of relief, knowing they had finally banished the darkness. The threat was gone, but Mia felt a deeper understanding. They had to keep telling their stories, to keep the light alive. As dawn broke, the sun poured through the church windows, illuminating the faces of the gathered townsfolk. They smiled, knowing the Morgans and Lucy were finally at peace. But in the back of Mia's mind, a quiet reminder lingered. Shadows might retreat, but they can always return. And so, they would remain vigilant, sharing their memories, united against the darkness that might one day come creeping back. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.